Kuzu Zangbo. Welcome to the e-learning project. I'm Sonam Zangmo from Drugel Central School, High Campus, and today I'm here with a lesson on economics for key stages 4 to 5, that is for grades 9 through 12. The topic that we have today is movement along the supply curve and shift in supply curve, and also exceptions to the law of supply. The objective of today's lesson is, by the end of the lesson, all of you hopefully will be able to understand what it means by movement along the supply curves. There are two movements, we'll look that into detail. What does it mean by shift, and what are the factors that will cause shifts in the supply curve? And finally, we will look at the exceptions to the law of supply. With this, let's move through the lesson. The first one we have here on the slide, as you may see, is movement along the supply curve. And then, as information, I want all of you to pay attention to the words here which are written in different colors. And so, in this lesson, you have to focus your attention on the words which are written in different color. Here is the red color. Movement along the supply curve. What it means by movement along the supply curve. When quantity supply changes as a result of change in price alone, because if you remember, in the determinants of factors affecting supply, there were many factors, and in our lesson that we presented earlier, we learned about 5 different factors. So from the 5 different factors, price was one of the key factors. And so here, when the supply curve moves, it moves along, it is going to be caused by price alone. With the other factors are not going to influence the movement of the supply curve. So when quantity supply changes as a result of change in price alone, other factors remaining same, it is known as change in quantity supplied. Let's move on with the next slide. Now, there are 2 types of movements along the supply curve, and we're going to look into the movements in detail. The first one is expansion or extension of supply. Before we move further with the meaning of what it means by expansion or extension of supply, can you guess what these words mean? Expansion, what is it? It means to expand or to shrink. What is your idea? All right, extension. The same thing. These words are synonyms. Expansion, you can either use expansion in supply or extension in supply, because these words are synonyms. And expansion or extension in supply basically means that supply is going to increase. And why will supply increase? Let's look at that in detail. Look here. When the quantity supplied of a commodity rises due to a rise in its own price, please bear in mind its own price. We are not talking about other factors here. When we talk about extension of supply, we have to bear in mind the factor that will cause the movement or the extension or expansion is the sole factor, price. Other factors affecting supply remaining constant. So we don't talk about the goals of the firm, nor do we talk about the input prices, because those were the factors other than price which affected supply. So it is called extension of supply. It leads to an upward movement along the supply curve. All right, we have a graph for this, so please don't worry. We will show it graphically as well. When supply changes, that is when supply increases because of the sole factor price, you have to remember this is called extension in supply or expansion of supply. The other movement is contraction. So one of the things that you can keep in your mind all the time is that you have to take the literal meaning of the words in economics, and most of the time it helps. Because see, if you look at this word contraction, contraction in the general understanding means to shrink. So here, earlier it was extending, it was expanding, it was extending, meaning becoming more or large, and here it is contracting, it is contraction. Contraction means to shrink, become few, become less. when quantity supplied of a commodity falls due to fall in its own price, again here movement, like I said earlier, is going to be determined only by the sole factor price. So here when you talk about movement, never think about other factors, goals of the firm nor input prices. These, like other 4 factors you are going to ignore. Here the focus is solely on price. Price is going to influence. So when the price falls, supply will fall. Okay. Other factors affecting supply remaining constant, it is called contraction of supply, and it leads to a downward shift of the supply, curve. And so, like I mentioned earlier, we have a graphical representation of the movement along the supply curve. And if you look at the graph here on the y-axis, what we have is, it is the price of the commodities that a producer is supplying to the market. So the prices are reflected in price here, the value is reflected here in terms, the currency, sorry, not the value. Value is in thousands, but currency we use here, okay, is in dollars. So on the y-axis we have the price, on the x-axis we have the quantity supplied. So here what you can understand is, if you remember the supply schedule we had with which we derived the supply curve, you can understand the original price here at which a producer was supplying was Nultrum. Can you guess? Absolutely, it's 3,000. All right. So sorry, we need to change the currency. It's dollars. $3,000, and the quantity supplied is 6 million, because if you look at the value here, okay, quantity supplied 600 million. 6 million, sorry, 6 million. That is the original price. At $3,000, the quantity supplied was 5 million. Sorry, it's not 6 million, it's 5 million. But when the price moved from $3,000 to $4,000, the blue dot that is going upward, 4,000, do you see that? 4,000, what has happened to the quantity supplied? It has expanded, it has extended. There is an extension, meaning there is an increase. So from 5 million, it has increased to 6 million. Why? The main reason, price has increased from $3,000 to $4,000. That's the reason. So that is the extension of supply explained, or which we have to understand graphically. In the second scenario, if you look at the y-axis, what you have to understand is, from the original price $3,000, the price has fallen to $2,000. So 3,000, it has dropped to 2,000, which means there is a decrease there is a fall in price by $1,000. When the price fell by 1,000, if you look at the quantity supplied, it has shrunk, it has decreased from 5 million to 4 million. And so this is contraction. Contraction, shrinking, becoming less, becoming few. Why? Price is becoming less. Remember the direct relationship between quantity supplied and the price, or the price and the quantity supplied. Extension, extending. Why did it increase? Because we learned that when the price increases, the quantity supplied will increase. So extension and contraction, I hope you understood. The main reason causing this to shift movement along, in the movement along, extension and contraction are the two movements. Both are caused by price. In contraction, price will shrink. In extension, price will increase, leading to increase in price. So one of the best ways that you can remember this is, imagine yourselves as producers here. When will you supply more? When the price increases, $3,000 to $4,000. When will you supply less? When the price decreases from $3,000 to $2,000. All right, let's move on with the next slide. Next one is shift of supply curve. Shift of supply curve. So here again is a movement, but the movement is going to be different. Earlier it was movement along the supply curve. Now is the shift. So in the shift also we have two situations or two cases of the shift. When the amount supplied of a commodity increases or decreases because of change in other factors, price remaining same. So this is very interesting, and I am hoping you will be able to grasp this lesson, because in the movement along, it was the price which caused the movement, which caused the change in the quantity supplied. But in case of shift, remember, price is remaining same. So it's the total opposite, is the other factors other than price, which is going to change the supply or change the quantity supplied of a particular commodity. So that's with shift, and in shift we have two situations. Shift in supply curves, what does it mean? Increase in supply, okay? The other one is decrease in supply. So first we are going to be looking at increase in supply. When more quantity of a commodity is supplied at the same price, price doesn't change, price has to remain same or constant. Due to change in other factors other than price, it is known as increase in supply. It leads to the rightward shift in supply curve. We have a graph for this later. Right now we need to understand what actually is happening in the shift. Price is remaining same, but it is the other factors which is affecting supply that is bringing about the change. So increase in supply. Remember, I told you the literal meaning of words in economics is very important. Increase means the quantity supplied is increasing, it's becoming more. Okay? So increase in supply, obviously the quantity supplied is becoming more. But is the price changing? Not at all. Price should remain same. If the price changes, we go back to the first concept, that's the movement, because then price will bring about change in the quantity supplied. The second one is decrease in supply. So again the literal meaning, look at the literal meaning, decrease, becoming few, becoming less. All right? When less quantity of a commodity is supplied at the same price due to change in other factors, it is known as decrease in supply. So when we talk about decrease in supply, what is going to happen is, later on you will see in the graph what is happening to the movement. But in general, right now, you should understand that supply is becoming less. Is it because of the price factor? No, not at all. It is because of factors other than price. Input prices, all right, goals of the firm. We learned that. So those are the factors which is going to make or bring about shift in the supply curve. And so here is the graphical representation of the shift of the supply curve. Now in this case you have S1 and S2, two curves, two supply curves. And so here what is happening right now is, can you guess what is happening? Yes, it is increase in supply because supply has increased from Q1 to Q2. Did the price change? No, that's why we talk about shift here. When the price remains same, we will have the situation of shift in supply. So in shift in supply, this graph is talking about increase in supply. Look at the shift. The shift is from Q to Q1. Price P1, it did not change and is not going to change. If you change that, your graph is going to be incorrect. So bear that in mind. So here S1 to S2, the curve also shifted. All right. So we also can say that shift to the right, shift to the right. When you say shift to the right, it is also correct. Or increase in supply. All right, let's move further. This is the other shift. It is the shift to the left or decrease in supply. Again, look at this from S1. Now some of you may be wondering why S1 here, because we have the same, we are using the same graph here, the earlier graph which we used for increase or shift to the right. So S1 is the original quantity supplied. Due to other factors other than price, quantity supplied has decreased. Future price expectation could be one of the reasons, or increase in the price of the input could be one of the reasons that the producers are not going to supply more. And here S1, original supply, it has moved to S3. Why? Other factors other than price, because we can see the price P1, it did not move at all. So Q1 to Q3. And so don't confuse here. Some of you may think, okay, the leveling S1 to S3, how come? No, we are using the previous graph. If you look at this, look here, S1 move to S2, increase in supply or shift to the right. And the same graph we are using for decrease in supply. Therefore, S1 to S3. I hope you understood it, Q1 to Q3. All right, so with this, we'll move on with the next lesson. Here, two types of changes. Actually, it's the same thing we talked about earlier, but a little more in detail, perhaps for you to understand, you to comprehend the lesson more, all right? So changes in supply versus changes in quantity supply. There are two changes. So one is shift in the supply curve, okay, is a change in supply. Now, when we talk about movement, if you look at the first one, supply S1, what you have is a movement along the supply curve is a change in quantity supplied. And that is caused by the factor price. A shift in the supply curve is shift either to the, for you now, is going to be right and left. So to the right, if it moves, is an increase. To the left, it moves. Whenever you talk about shift, it is shift to the right, shift to the left, increase or decrease. All right. Next, interesting. This is an interesting concept, exceptional supply curves. What is the actual supply curve? It is a positively sloped supply curve. It is a positively sloped supply curve. So you have the y-axis, you have the x-axis, never forget to do that, quantity supplied, and you have the price. So this is the actual supply curve, which is a positively sloped supply curve. However, here you will come to know about two abnormal supply curves, meaning the question is, are they there in the economy? Is there any importance of this to us? Definitely. Okay, they are important, and so we are going to be looking at each graph one at a time. So exceptional means, literal meaning of the words here again, exceptional means it doesn't normally happen because this is the actual curve of supply. The supply curve we learnt as when the price increases, supply will increase, and when the price falls, supply will fall. But then here you have two graphs which acts completely different to what the supply law is stating, which means they are different from what normally happens. So exceptional means is not that it is not happening. It means it is not there, but it can happen. This is something you have to keep in mind. It is not there generally, commonly, but can it happen? Absolutely, it can happen. So we're going to look at the two graphs one at a time. So here we have the first exceptional supply curve. That's the vertical supply curve. So here, interesting. In case of certain commodities like gold, old paintings, old manuscripts, rare postage stamps, old coins, etc., supply is fixed. Or do you think that their supply would be determined by the factors we learnt, including price? Not at all. All right? Although they may fetch a high price, what is happening is their quantity is limited. You know, when we talk about old paintings, you know, in our context, in the Bhutanese context, we can talk about tankas, which are very ancient. Okay? And so if you take it to the market, perhaps you can earn a high price for those commodities. But the question is, can we have those tankas again and again? All right? As the price is increasing or as the price is rising? Not at all. They are limited. So their supply is fixed. Whatever the price, their supply is going to be fixed. Supply would not change whether the price increases or decreases. That's the reality. Quite often, when the price increases for producers in general, what they do is they want to supply more, and then it is their motivation to produce more and supply when the price is high. So therefore, higher the price, higher the supply. But when price falls, supply will decline. But here, in case of certain items, the few examples I have cited here is the old paintings, old manuscripts, all right, rare postage stamps and old coins. They fetch a high price, but we cannot do anything. We cannot do anything to their supply. You cannot go back to the 17th century and then produce or manufacture more tankas, because you are fetching, in this 21st century, you are fetching more price for this. You can't do this. So supply is fixed. Supply would not change whether price increases or decreases. In some cases, supply may be fixed in the very short period of time. However, you also need to understand that the three periods in supply, the market period, the short period, and the long period. So this, in those cases, you know, if you are a farmer, the last line, my emphasis right now is on the last line. In some cases, supply may be fixed in the very short period, which means imagine yourselves as farmers, and you're going to the local market today, all right, and you have with you, like, let's say 100 kgs of apple. And when you take it to the market, you just realize that all the consumers want to buy your apple, and then suddenly your apple gets exhausted, all right? And you live, like, let's say 2 days out from the market. Can you bring apples again? Not at all. So that's in the short period. However, given the time, let's say tomorrow again there is that market, the local market is going to be open tomorrow again. Can you bring your apples? Absolutely, you may, all right? You may. So this is something you have to bear in mind. So we look at our graph. So this is what I'm saying. Now if you look at the price here, okay, price is very clearly reflected on the y-axis and quantity supplied on the x-axis. And you have a vertical supply curve. The vertical supply curve and so this is the this reflects the price. Y-axis we have the price. And so what is this graph trying to tell us? Is this a vertical supply curve? All right, so this is the initial price and this is the quantity supplied. And you're talking here about an old manuscript, all right, or old gold coins, or very old textile, all right, which we generally see in the handicraft stores. So this is their initial price. Suddenly we hear that, like, you know, that if you have old textile, let's say at this point, you're going to get 75,000. So this is in thousands, all right? So this is 75,000. This is the initial price. And then suddenly you hear that it is going to increase to 85,000. What is going to happen to the quantity supplied is whether the price increases from 75,000 to 85,000. If you look at our supply curve, it is remaining the same. It is very stubborn, is not at all moving. Even an inch, it doesn't want to move, and that's the reality. You cannot make things ancient now. You know, when we talk about these kiras, they are old, like some kiras are as old as 200 years old. And so to say that, oh, okay, the price is more, all right, I want to supply those kiras more, it doesn't make any sense. And so it goes against the law of supply. Again, I'm going to reflect here, what is our law of supply? Law of supply is saying that when price is high, supply will be high. But look at our price. Price has increased. But did the quantity increase? Not at all. Very stubborn. And that's the reality. So this is the first exceptional case. So that's why exceptional means, it doesn't mean it cannot happen. It can happen. But is it normal? Not at all normal. Does it happen every day? It doesn't happen every day. Exceptional. Once in a while it's happening. All right? So that's with the vertical supply curve. Let's move on with the second exceptions to the law of supply. When we talk about such graphs, remember what the law of supply states. Direct relationship Price high, supply high. Price low, supply low. So the second exception to the law of supply means this is not going to go with the law of supply. It is going to go different or away from the law of supply. A worker divides his time between work and leisure. Do you agree? Yes, we divide our time between work and leisure. We don't want to work 24/7 and be bogged down and emotionally burdened all the time. We want to divide our work. That's why we work from Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday we are free. You don't work, all right? So that's how we divide our work and leisure time. As the wage rate increases, the working hour of labor also increases. So although you work, okay, although you divide, you have to divide your time between work and leisure. Suddenly your boss is saying, imagine you're working in a firm, all right? You're working in a company, you're working in an international company, let's say. And your boss is saying that, all right, I need you to work even on Saturday and Sunday. What would you do? And he's saying that I'm going to give you remunerations. I'm going to give you perks, all right? Come and work Saturday and Sunday also, you have to work. Maybe for a couple of weeks, you may be happy to work, all right? But the point is, would you be working for an year long? Like, would you be able to work for the year long, all the weekends? Can you sacrifice your time, okay? Your time that is to be spent with your family, maybe enjoy, visit recreational parks and all that. Can you be spending that on working because the pay is high? No. But some of you may say yes, okay? But for many of us, it is a no, because money is important, but money is not everything. That's what we have to bear in mind as a GNA citizen, all right? So therefore, however, after a certain point, if the wage rate still increases, then the worker will work less and go for more leisure. You will lose your potential to work after a time, all right? Even if you want to make more money, you will reach a point, if you don't take rest, your body will collapse. And so emotionally burdened, physically wrecked you would be if you keep on working, even if you are paid more money. And for your information, I also would like to inform you that this is a scenario generally in developed nations. That's why if you look back to our country before the COVID-19 came around, all right, we had the tourism industry booming. And if you ask those people, the tourists coming to our country, so how do you manage this? Because generally speaking, most of us cannot afford to go and then enjoy or relax. We cannot do that. It's a financially, physically, emotionally, such a huge challenge. But if you ask them, they say that, oh, you know what? We work for 9 months straight. We work for 9 months, and then for 3 months, we have to take a break. All right? And that's because people divide. Even if their company may be paying more, these people know that, they have to take a break. So therefore, what you have is, perhaps graphically you will understand. So here, the wage rate, that is the price or the remuneration paid for a labor for his effort in the production of goods and services, wage rate, all right, is reflected on the y-axis, and hours worked. So if you look at the curve, our curve is going backward. It's a backward sloping curve. We are going away from this in these two situations, exceptions to the law of supply. It should be positive, but interestingly here, the backward sloping supply curve is taking almost after the law of demand curve. Because here, if you look at the wage rate, initial wage rate we can understand as W3, all right? So if you look at W3, what is happening is, wage rate is increasing, hours worked by the laborers is also increasing, all right? But as you see, if you look at the topmost wage rate, that's the W1, what has happened to the hours worked is it has shrunk, it has decreased from L3, okay, to L2. That is, people are not willing to work even if their wages are high, or the price paid for their effort in the production is high. And so this is something that doesn't happen all the time, but we can expect this to happen. That's why exceptions to the law of supply. I hope you understood. And with this, we have come to the end of our lesson. Now, let's reflect. What did we learn today? All right, what did we learn today? We learned about the shift and the movement. Shift to the right, shift to the left, okay? Increase, decrease, and movement along the supply curves, okay? We have learned about 2 movements, we have learned about 2 shifts, and we also have learned about 2 interesting supply curves. One is a vertical supply curve, and one is a backward sloping supply curve. And with this, we have come to the end of our lesson. So as for the reflection, I would suggest you to explore, do we have these exceptions to the law of supply in our country? The vertical sloping supply curve and the backward sloping supply curve. That's the first one. First reflection you can work on, okay? The second thing you can reflect after this lesson is that what could be those factors that would lead to shift to the right and shift to the left, or increase or decrease in the supply curve. And the next reflection you can work on is you can try to draw the movement along the supply curve. Like, just take the concept that we discussed right now, okay? And then you can try to draw the graph. See that you are able to draw the graph, because that's very important. And also, the last one, you can explain. After drawing the graph, you can explain why that is happening. The movement, like, movement, you have 2 movements, extension, expansion, and contraction. You can explain that. With this, thank you for being with me. Wash your hands, stay at home, social distancing, and keep safe and be healthy and happy. Thank you.